Good evening and welcome to Unfiltered on SABC3. I'm Desiree Jauke, standing in for Aldrin Sampier. As we wrap up Youth Month, South Africa's youth are facing a bleak future. South Africa is experiencing a massive crisis of unemployment amongst a whopping 32.6% of the population, while the statistics among the youth stand at a record high of 63.3%, and this is according to Stats SA. Is there political will to tackle unemployment? Job cuts also mean a bigger pool of unemployed people, and should the economy recover, it is those with experience who will be more appealing to potential employers. Social experts have touted the basic income grant as a way to relieve those desperate for an income. Is the basic income grant provided, will it provide the answer to joblessness in the immediate future? We're asking this question tonight as we ask, is government doing enough to tackle unemployment? Let's welcome our guest, Crystal Duncan-Williams. She is the project lead at Youth Capital, a youth-led advocacy campaign to reduce youth unemployment through the implementation of a shared agenda. We also have Amanda Ringquist. She's the National Education and Training Manager at Black Sash. Ladies, thank you so much for making the time to join us today. I'm sure you have had a month to engage with these devastating numbers, but in response to those bleak youth employment figures, government is now talking about the National Youth Policy in an effort to strengthen youth development and placing young people in jobs. Have you been able to look at these proposals, and what are your thoughts? Crystal, let's start with you.
Thanks so much, Desiree. So I think, it's important to note that government has been making many initiatives over the last few years. And just recently at Youth Day, the president spoke about the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, which actually he launched in SONA 2020. But with COVID, it kind of got lost, I think, in the response to the pandemic. And so there's been a renewed energy and vigor around this plan. And particularly what he was launching with Youth Day is the SA Youth.mobi network. That's supposed to be a network of networks that's connecting young people to learning and earning opportunities. And I think if we look at all these interventions, we can see that there is definitely political will from government, but I think the reason that these policies have failed to really make any kind of dent is because they've all been top-down. They haven't really taken into account the lived experiences of young people, and they haven't looked to learn from what existing knowledge exists in the sector. There are thousands of youth development organizations that have been working with young people to equip them to step into the world of work. And yet government doesn't seem to be drawing on the experiences that sit within the sector in order to tailor-make these plans and make sure that the implementation of these policies is aligned with what is happening on the ground and the realities of what it's like to be a young person in South Africa in 2021.
It is a huge concern that government is not responding to current needs, as you say, Crystal. But Amanda, let's bring you in here. Some of the proposals that are proposed in the National Youth Policy, which is spearheaded by the Department of Women, Youth and People Living with Disabilities, is to abolish the requirement for experience for entry-level jobs, to enable more youth to enter the labor market. They want to create a national pathway to management, equip young people with skills in key growth sectors. Are these going to help?
Firstly, thank you so much, Desiree, for having the Black Sash on the full view. I think that we have had a situation over the past few years where government has touted unemployment to be the silver bullet, the thing that's going to solve, or job opportunities as the thing that's going to solve unemployment in South Africa. But what we don't often discuss and what isn't addressed by the South African government is that unemployment is structural in South Africa. So you can have as many policies, and you can have the YES initiative, and you can have EPWN workers, but all of those things are unsustainable because the structural issue of our economy, our shrinking economy, our junk status, all of that means that unemployment, the jobs do not exist, that there will never be enough jobs to meet the number of unemployed people in South Africa, which I think is at 11 million now. And so we've put job creation as the answer to the youth crisis, but it's simply not true to think that.
Yeah. So another thing that is touted with this national youth policy is that the NYDA and the Department of Small Business implement grant funding, almost like an introduction of a new basic income grant aimed at specifically at the country's unemployed youth. Black Sash has been calling for the revival of grants similar to the ones, an incentive similar to the COVID-19 Social Relief of Distress Fund. Would something like this work, Amanda?
Well, the Black Sash is, of course, very much in favor of expanding social assistance. So what the Black Sash has been calling for, which is semi in line with what Minister Mashabane has been saying, is that we must reinstate the 350 Rand Social Relief of Distress grant, and it must be increased for the immediate. It should at least be increased to the food poverty line, which is 585. And if the government is, as it's always going to say, there are austerity measures, we cannot afford it, then I do think, I mean, first prize is for everyone to be getting a grant, but the idea that we need to have a phased-in approach could possibly work, and those should be then targeted at 18 to 24 years. But what we do know is that it should not be as low as the 350 Rand grant, because then the 350 Rand grant is not a suitable amount of money to meet people's basic needs, especially when people are traveling so far to access those 350 Rand grants.
Crystal,
so the Black Sash is not a... No, sorry.
You're welcome to finish your point.
So the Black Sash is not opposed to government phasing in basic income support for those who are 18 to 24. But at the very least, especially now during COVID, we must reinstate the 350 Rand grant for everybody.
Crystal, how's Youth Capital engaging with this mooted basic income grant for young people in South Africa?
So at Youth Capital, we're we're of the similar opinion as the Black Sash, as Amanda's pointed out, that we accept the government might not be able to roll it out to everybody, and if there is going to be a phased approach, then young job seekers should be at the top of the list. We know also from the data around the NIDSCRAM survey and other similar surveys conducted during COVID that the people that have been the most impacted by the pandemic are young Black females. We know that there's a gender dynamic to work seeking in this country. When surveyed a lot of young people in that exact age group, if you compare males and females, there are far more females who say they are unable to look for work because of family responsibilities. So the cost of job seeking, I think, is vastly underestimated. A study from the University of Johannesburg from 2018 put the costs near 900 Rand a month in some instances just to look for work. And that's mostly data and transport. Now, how are young people supposed to afford that on a monthly basis and still feed themselves when often there aren't any other breadwinners in their home and they're all relying on some kind of grant? So I think when we look at what the cost of job seeking is, and then you add into that the gender dynamic that females face when they have to find childcare just to be able to attend interviews and go and look for work, a basic income grant would be a life-changing opportunity for young people. We have these millions of young people that are discouraged and say that they've given up looking. And actually, when you delve into it, it's not that they've given up hope of ever finding a job. It's just when you ask them, they say, well, I can't look now because I don't have the money to do that. And a basic income grant could go a long way to doing that. Another thing is to zero rate all of the platforms where young people access job opportunities, and this is what the government is trying to do with the SAYouth.mobi platform, which is zero rated. It's got online learning material for young people, and it's connecting them to learning and earning opportunities, and they can access that through an app without it costing them any data. Other things we can look at is a transport stipend or some kind of card that young people can have to access transport at a reduced fee, as we know that this also adds to their job-seeking costs. Thank you.
It's amazing the many aspects and elements and dynamics that you've mentioned in that one answer, but we'll continue to have the conversation. You're watching Unfiltered. We're talking about youth employment in South Africa, or unemployment, as we wrap up Youth Month. Let's take a break. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back and thanks for staying with Unfiltered here on S3, and we're talking to two ladies. From Crystal Duncan is the project lead at Youth Capital, and Amanda Ringquist is the National Education and Training Manager at Black Sesh, about youth unemployment in South Africa, the shock job numbers, and a plan to give the basic income grant to people under 35. Ladies, you both agree that the income grant is a good idea, but let's talk about the National Youth Development Agency being the implementing agent with all its problems that it's facing itself. Is that a good idea? Crystal, let's start with you.
So I think that the mandate of the NYDA has been a little bit scattered, and I think that's why the NYDA amendment bill is a welcome policy change from our point of view. The NYDA needs to be more structured in its approach. I think traditionally it's just been seen as a funder for entrepreneurs and small businesses, and this alone is not a silver bullet for youth unemployment in this country. We need to understand that young people are on a journey from their school journey all the way through to their transitioning period into finding earning opportunities and creating sustainable livelihoods for themselves. And the NYDA should really be coordinating all of the government's work around that entire journey, and to focus on only one section will obviously leave many young people out in the cold and not have their needs addressed. So I think the NYDA has been plagued by many problems before, but the new board appointment process has been a lot more transparent. We're hopeful that the new board will represent the views of young people and won't have any political and ulterior motives. And really try to guide the NYDA towards its strategic objective, coordinating government departments which notoriously do not work well together. And this, I think, is the downfall of a lot of youth development in this country, is that government departments do not speak well to each other when it comes to youth development, and the NYDA should really be coordinating that. And then secondly, that the NYDA includes youth participation in its decisions in a meaningful way and not a tokenistic way, and finds ways of engaging with young people across the heterogeneity of youth in this country.
So, Amanda, should the grant materialize, who is the correct implementing agent?
Well, I can't speak to the NYDA, but what I can speak to is the issues that we've seen that the Black Sash has monitored with respect to the 350 SRD grant, and what the biggest crisis that we've seen in it is one of the biggest crises we've seen is that government departments their systems and their databases do not speak to each other. And what this has resulted in is many people being excluded from the grant because there's a SARS list that is outdated and has them still listed as earning income, or there's a UIF list from the Department of Labor that is outdated and has people listed as still receiving UIF, or NSFAS, or various other government databases. Home Affairs has people listed as not having an ID, or people who are dead have been claiming the 350 Rand grant. And so what we do know is that firstly, the government needs to sort out its internal communications and its internal databases and make sure that those are correct before we want to give it to a new state-owned entity or state-owned agency to run. But the second thing is that we want to create a capable state, and a capable state means that the Department of Social Development, who is responsible or is the custodian of many of the rights in Section 27, such as the right to social assistance, is the department mandated to look after the social assistance needs of all South Africans, including the youth. And so they must be pushed to fulfill their mandate, including they must be pushed to implement a basic income grant for young people and for all South Africans. So we still think that this is the Department of Social Development and Minister Zulu's responsibility, alongside the Minister of Youth, Minister Mashavane, and also alongside the finance minister, Minister Mboweni, who needs to come to the party in terms of understanding the very important constitutional mandate of social assistance and of youth empowerment.
Let's talk about low-hanging fruit. The policy proposals talk about industries that have a high absorption capacity that have been prioritized for employing young people, and they talk about the agricultural sector, tourism, mining, and the oceans economy. Do you agree with the assertion that employment can be created here? But also last week, when President Cyril Ramaphosa was launching the National Ports Authority, talking about reforms to improve efficiencies at ports and boosting investment, he spoke about the potential of this space to create immediate jobs. Are you in agreement with this? Or do you have different thoughts about where young people can immediately be employed and where we can start to see results in terms of an improvement in employment for young people? Kristen?
So I think, the mistake we make when we speak about employment is we assume that if there were jobs available, suddenly all the 9 million young people who are not in employment, educational training will be absorbed. If I waved a magic wand and created 9 million jobs tomorrow, I guarantee you that those 9 million people, the majority of them would not be able to successfully step into those jobs and fulfill what is required in the world of work, because our education system is failing to provide young people with basic communication skills and soft skills. When you speak to employers and they speak about young people who come into the workplace, the soft skills that are lacking in young people are the reasons that many of them start a job and drop out, or the reasons why employers are hesitant to hire young people. And so I think if we want to talk about these sectors, then we have to speak about it as a pipeline. We have to have ways of mentoring young people. We can't expect them to just walk into these opportunities. I think the tourism sector is questionable in COVID, and with how slow our vaccination program is going, when we're going to be able to open up to a full tourism industry again is highly questionable. And some of the other sectors, we speak about agriculture. I do think there's lots of potential there. But I think what we need to speak about is who is going to mentor these young people. We need older people who have experience to commit to walking the journey with a young person and understanding what it's like to be that young person, and creating a space where that young person can come in and say, I'm really struggling to get to work every day because the money you've given me barely covers my transport, and I still have to put food on the table at home, etc., etc. And we hear these stories of young people who are too scared to come forward, and so they just stop going to the job, and they just lose the job because they can't speak about their experiences and they feel misunderstood by employers. So I think, creating these economic opportunities is obviously paramount to reducing youth unemployment, but we have to equip young people for the world of work, and we aren't doing a very good job with that. The syllabus, the life orientation syllabus, in my opinion, is a missed opportunity. We have young people in high schools for 5 years doing this subject, but it's not really imparting any skills to them to equip them for life after school.
Amanda, we have to take a break, but I'm going to ask you to just gather your thoughts around the same question, which we will deal with when we get back in our conversation about the National Youth Policy and the mooted idea to bring about a basic income grant for people under 35. You're watching Unfiltered. Let's take a break. Welcome back. As we wrap up Youth Month in South Africa, we're looking at the National Youth Policy and the mooted effort to bring about a comprehensive basic income grant for young people. Amanda, before we went to break, we were talking about those industries that are said to have a high absorption capacity and can immediately start to employ young people, including agriculture, tourism, mining, and the oceans economy. Are you in agreement with this, or do you have a different outlook?
I think that those are very hopeful ideals from the president, and those are in theory very, very good, and we want to have as many people employed as possible. But the truth is that research has shown, and I'm no expert on this, but research has shown that there has been deindustrialization in South Africa, that we are not industry, we're not a labor intensive economy. We export certain things, we import certain things, but apart from the mining sector and the agricultural sector, which has become more and more automated, the truth of the matter is that the jobs that exist in South Africa do not have a matched skill set because of some of the issues that Crystal raised about the education levels or how we are preparing people for work. But the truth of the matter is that, like I said at the beginning, there is structural unemployment. So we could have all these ideas about a ports and an oceans economy, like the president has suggested, but these are not in any way an answer for today or for tomorrow or for next week and people's hunger. These are industries that the South African economy is going to have to develop and begin to expand and invest in those industries. They are not, as the president said, jobs that are immediately available today. And so we have to begin to ask the question about what we do about people's hunger today and what we do about the humanitarian crisis that's happening right now in South Africa. And so what the Black Sash has said and what others have said is that we must have a plan that is both jobs and basic income support related, that those two things must work hand in hand, and we must begin to grow the economy for jobs, but we must also meet people's basic needs for food, water, and shelter right now.
Crystal, when we started the conversation, we were talking about the numbers that came out of the quarterly labor force survey, but from everything we've discussed today, it's pretty clear that the situation is so much more desperate for young job seekers. And there's that sentiment that both the private and the public sector do not fully understand the needs of young people. With all the engagements you have with the young people you're exposed to, what do young people need in order to advance their status in terms of employability?
Thanks so much. And I think for anybody tuning in, I think you should go and check out our 10-point action plan, youthcapital.co.za, because we've got a very comprehensive list of what we think the 10 big things are that young people need. But for the sake of time, I'm going to summarize here. Young people need to be supported in their education journey. Whatever they endeavor to complete, we need to support them to get the qualification. You know, TVET students that can't get their full degrees because they can't get work-based place learning experience is an unacceptable reality. SETAs who are backlogged for 2 years to issue learnership certificates to young people that have completed the work required to earn that learnership certificate is an unacceptable reality. Universities withholding certificates from graduates who have completed their degrees because of historical debt is an unacceptable reality. These things are holding young people back who have the skills, who could step into these sectors, but because they can't prove that they have it, they're held back. You know, and then young people, when they step out of these places of learning, they have huge information gaps, they have very little social capital, and they face the huge cost of job seeking, as I've said already. And we need to find ways to support them in that.
Thank you so much for your inputs, and we now, time is against us, but Amanda, just a quick one. What's the solution? One-liner.
We got to implement a basic income support now for all people with little to no income.
Thank you once again.
We have to do that, and we have to finance that.
Thank you so much, ladies. Crystal Duncan is the project lead at Youth Capital, and Amanda Ringquist is the National Education and Training Manager at Black Sash. Thank you so much for watching. This has been your Monday edition of Unfiltered. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.